Well, welcome to reports from the In Search of Fearlessness Center and Research Institute, which is right here in my office, and the Fearology Institute, which is also right here in my office, as I am in many ways an entrepreneur, um, maybe a social, ethical entrepreneur, maybe someone who has not, in a sense, made it in the business world of entrepreneurship. And yet I want to talk about something that's extremely important in my work, however it gets marketed and or communicated and hopefully effective in some way. And that is this series is going to be on psychotic, or what I like to call the near psychotic experience, NPE, like near death experience, NDE, much more research in common. Nobody that I know of is really researching on near psychotic experiences, although I am finding some interesting bits of information about more and more people having psychotic-like experiences, including right down to children. And it's something we haven't always paid attention to. And of course, in this series of videos I'll be exploring, well, how do we actually define and make meaning of psychotic and not just be caught within the typical psychological paradigm or dominant medical view, biomedical model of understanding psychoses, the psychotic experience, the psychotic system, which is really what I'm very interested in, the psychotic field of experience, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see I'm throwing out a lot of words there. But this particular first video, I'm going to start with a quick little experience and story that I had. Went with my partner to a Central Library, core of City of Calgary business meeting. It was actually an event. The public was open to come, and I went not really actually knowing what I was going to. Barbara just thought, well, we might be interested in this. It's about new entrepreneurship in the community of Calgary and in the East Village part of the city, and this whole renewal and hopefulness about how to diversify the economy of Alberta and so on and so on. So this could be in any city that you would have this kind of entrepreneurial spirit of coming and getting together. And so I watched the business community, 500 plus people showed up, mostly young people, but not all. And, you know, this kind of energy of creating, and we're going to create the great city, and we're going to be the great greening of, and in our new way of doing business, and so on and so on. But I'll have to say, after being there for near 2 hours listening, there was absolutely no smallest bit about the impending global warming, climate, social collapse. As you know, I've done a few videos on this, the Great Citizen video, the Great Collapse video on my YouTube channel. You can check those out if you like. So also been doing a series on history of transformation, which is, you know, about big change. So all of these, the psychotic series that I'm doing right now is really amalgamation and threaded through those other works. So if you want to tie into those, listen to those videos, create conversation with me or others around it, etc. So I was listening for, again, almost 2 hours to these top entrepreneur and supportive services for entrepreneurs that the City of Calgary puts money into, as well as some other bodies of business interest enterprise. And, you know, really well-meaning spirit. These are energetic people who are at least not sitting on their butt doing nothing. They really care about the world. They care about the city. They care about community, quality of life, care about the future. And yet, as I say, you know, there was to me like a psychotic split of knowledge and information that just was not being said, like the elephant in the room of the crisis that we're heading into in very close, intimate time, in the sense of the future coming right up to face me face you, face us as a planet. Amazing crises already underway. I won't repeat all that. That's so obvious now what's happening in terms of just weather events, but also instability and political massive changes in that, with that instability, moving more and more to fundamentalist and right-wing extremist kinds of governments, etc. All of that, as the day unfolds, I have to deal with the real world of all of this fast lane business kind of world, people carrying on as if it's just all the same. They wake up tomorrow morning. But these entrepreneurs, to me, they said, we're interested in helping shape the future of the country, and they're all optimistic and trying to be energetic and happy, I guess. But no real reality. And that's the psychotic split, disjointed from and not connected to talking about or opening space at the table for the 13th fairy, the one that doesn't quite fit the nice, beautiful, clean image of the success and the business optimism. Business is supposed to always be optimistic, right? You never tell somebody you're not doing so good in your business because you always want to try to get more business. So you got to kind of pretend in this kind of psychotic way, split off from the reality, split off from the truth. It's a kind of lie. One could say a benign lie, but is it really? To the point where we've been living on this planet and in the last 25 years added more damage to the CO2 levels than the entire history of humanity. We're talking, again, 25 years, and of course that's just only exacerbating on an exponential curve of damage and crises and cascading crises. So it wasn't brought up, and I rode my bike home and thought, wow, they don't want to talk about it. They're so afraid. And that's what wasn't being admitted, right? So myself being a fearologist of specialty for the last 30 years, I couldn't help but notice the lack. So I started thinking about, well, how do I communicate with the business community and this entrepreneurial spirit, right? Called Platform Calgary is who put on the event. Anyway, it just reminded me of a few things I want to share this morning on this very beginning intro on the psychotic, and how we're going to have to handle and deal with and manage and heal and transform and or whatever comes from going into a kind of mass hypnosis psychotic experiencing, and all the massive denial, again, that I just saw in 2019 at this meeting, such complete ignoring of really, really dangerous and troublesome world we're heading into, and troublesome minds that we're carrying that does not want to bring the 13th fairy into the room. And there will be great consequences for not bringing the 13th fairy in the room. As you remember the story of Sleeping Beauty and what happens when you don't include the 13th fairy at the party. That's another story, another metaphor, another teaching lesson that I'll probably bring in another video. I think it was Marshall McLuhan back in the 70s, late 70s or early 80s. I heard this quote from Marshall McLuhan, the great cultural media communications expert and iconic figure in understanding how media works and how it takes us into kind of a dislocated media is, the medium is the message, was his one famous quote. But the other quote he was, I think, more interesting and less known, and that was, humanity in the modern world, civilized world, so-called technological world, is heading down the highway in a bus, and the driver is going in reverse, and he's looking through his rear view mirror, attempting to guide the bus at 60 miles an hour. Bus going backward, we're all on the bus. The driver is looking in the rear view mirror, trying to steer the bus. that was an interesting metaphor for being in the fast lane and kind of in a way being out of control, and certainly not in a situation of being in very good control trying to drive through your back rear view mirror. Then I thought of another story just this morning and really spurred me to do this video and to actually start the psychotic process. I've been researching on the psychotic for a few weeks now, very specifically, and finding it very interesting as my notes and different viewpoints on what is psychotic keep growing. And I'll have a lot to share and a lot to inquire into. A lot of unknowns with that. But the other thought I had this morning, civilization where we are right now is like we're driving the bus. Let's just say we're actually driving, the driver is driving forward, not looking through the rear view mirror, as Marshall McLuhan said, driving forward, and we come up to an intersection and the light turns yellow. And that's the warning. 1992, world scientists, I think there was like 1,700 plus, signed this petition saying this is our first warning of the direction of human civilization, and particularly in relationship to how we are responding to and or lack of response to our environment, and the way the economic system is made to not pay attention to it very well at all. We're heading into the first warning. That was 1992, huge, as I say, 1,700 plus, I think maybe even 17,000. But these are big numbers of scientists universally around who said, this is your first warning, humanity. At 2018, we got the second warning, roughly, and that was 10 times that many scientists who said, we are going down a road that will take us to massive, if not extinction, as a species, and this is your second warning. 1992 to 2018, and all signs from most observers of who follow this as professionals, as scientists and or professional observers, journalists and so on, myself included, have basically seen and ended up seeing after the failure of the Poland UN climate crisis conference, that governments and most big players on the planet are not taking serious action on these warnings, and have not done so since 1992. So here we are on the big bus, and we're heading to the intersection of this major city, and we're going through the intersection. The light turns yellow. We go right through. Everything was sort of okay. We had a little bit of anxiety with the yellow, going through a yellow light, but we made it through. Come to the next intersection, the light turns yellow, and we're now going through the second warning, red. The light is red, and we enter the intersection. And we may or may not make it through. Okay, yeah. How many of us have not gone through a red light at some point in our driving career? Well, when I used to drive a car, yes, I have gone through some red lights. But then if you get through that light, maybe this is where we are now. Got through without too bad of scrapes, although that's debatable on a planetary level. We're obviously suffering some consequences for our actions deeply, globally. We come to that second intersection and it turns red before we get there. And we're right now in slow motion, camera action, going into slow motion. We're in this giant movie of heading for potential catastrophe, because the probability of going through another red light after the second warning, red light, we've become to realize that we've lost the baseline perspective. If you look critically, then you'll awaken to this reality. We've lost the baseline of you're supposed to slow down when you come to an intersection generally. just because of the potential for somebody else missing the light signal, the warning, and going through major crash. But when you get the yellow light, that definitely is slow down. And of course, if you're already halfway in the intersection, you got to keep speeding through. But what we're doing is we're losing the baseline of realizing that when you come to a set of lights at an intersection, that actually means something. When you get in the fast lane of the craziness, the psychotic now, where we're out of touch with a lot of reality, we're out of touch with this intersection and what it means, the precaution that's required, we're losing that baseline because we've accepted so much danger, a probability of danger for our actions. But it's like, well, that's normal. Well, that's the way I drive. We drive fast. We go through red lights. Oh, that's because that's normal now, because that's the way you were raised. And young people are raised in a different world than I was, or the generations before. So baselines of precautionary sanity, referencing to reality, that's a lot of danger you're putting yourself through, and you've now accepted it as virtually normal, and you somehow think, believe, and here's where the fantasy and the illusion and delusion of the psychotic, again, near psychotic experiencing in PE comes in, where we think, we made it through the last red light, so let's go through this one too. So this is nothing to do with law and that you possibly could get a ticket and or whatever. And then the worst part is that as we're coming up, this is where I see humanity right now, is we're coming to that second intersection. Again, we've lost our baseline of understanding the precautionary probability of real serious damage of going through red lights, breaking the code of sanity. And the bus driver is looking at their iPhone, texting, driving with one hand, texting now, and coming up to the second red light. Well, I guess I'll go through this one too. Just go a little faster. Maybe nothing will happen. Business as usual, right? Carry on. And I connect that to the listening to the 500 plus people in that room and watching and listening to the energy and just getting how they just do not want to look at the baseline of reality of where we have been heading with these warnings that we've been getting from the scientific community and many others, especially in the ecological movement, myself being included as one of those activist educators. For me, going back to the 70s, and many of us started in the 60s, in 1962 with Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, and the warning. So that's another warning. It's another yellow light, come red light that we've gone through and keep going through. And here we are now in 2019, being told by the major scientists of the world that we now have 11 years to turn around and keep the temperature of the planet down below 2 degrees and so on. Whatever the statistics and the numbers are, we can debate all that. When I'm not big on that, as I've told you in other videos, but I am big on us going through red lights. What does it take to put into a human being into their intelligence systems? What's happened? The conditioning, the hypnosis, the fear-based denial that doesn't want to experience and go through the real fear, the real terror of where we're driving, how we're driving, what we're doing at intersections that are important warning points and signals, and we're ignoring more or less those signals. They're going in one ear, out the other, carry on, business as usual, let's go have fun, let's have a party, and so on, and we cope with the reality of what's happening. So that's my little story and my analogy, my teaching lesson for the day. Be interesting to see what other teaching stories I will come up with, or you will come up as we explore perhaps this psychotic journey that we're on, and what do we know about psychoses that, again, beyond just a clinical model. I'm going to be looking transdisciplinary at psychoses and sharing what I can learn and know, and ultimately, how do we intervene in the psychotic process and the power of it to take us down where we really don't want to go. It's like some part of us knows I should not be going through this red light at this kind of speed in the fast lane, carrying on as if everything's normal. Okay, thanks very much for this. Look forward to more chatting with you on, and more sharing and awakening into the 21st century.